Hey there everyone, and welcome back to Full Stack Development with Ember and Rails. I'm Josh Justice, aka Coding It Wrong, back again. And today is actually going to be our last stream on Ember and Rails for a little while. I'm going to take a little break to focus on some other projects. So we're going to wrap things up and get the project into a good state today together. We're going to get into some editing. So we've got displaying of data, we've got creating of data, deleting of data, but now we want to put some editing forms in. And there's a bit more complexity, but also a bit more opportunities with front-end frameworks like Ember. To be able to have a good user experience when you're editing. Also some challenges, so it took me a few weeks of messing around with this on my own to get to the point where I was happy with the solution. We're going to dig into that together. And then we're going to take a little time at the end of the stream to wrap up and think about the overall results of what we've done together and discovered about Rails and Ember and why it's an approach that I really highly recommend. Before that, I want to plug one new project that fits in a lot with what our focus has been. It's called Graffiti. It's a new project for running Rails backends. It's JSON API compliant, and so you could use it with Ember data or other front ends. And it seeks to really be a best of both worlds solution, combining some of the benefits of GraphQL with combining and stitching data together for single requests and having a nice UI to be able to kind of explore a UI, with also some of the benefits of JSON API as far as conventions around how to set up your data, not having to repeat a lot of custom mutations might be the word, I forget the word for it, and just being able to operate at a bit of a higher level at a better abstraction. In particular, if you go to their website, it's graffiti.dev, and if you go in there and pull up the Why Graffiti or Why Not GraphQL page, there's some really good stuff in there that talks about some of the limitations of GraphQL that I hadn't gotten into because I haven't done GraphQL myself. But it's important warnings to know the cost and the work that you have to do to use this approach. It's great. GraphQL is a great approach for some things, but I think JSON API and in particular Graffiti could be worth checking out. So give it a try, give them feedback, help make the project better. All right, so we're going to jump in to the Ideas app right now. Another quick note, the whole point of this app has been to build out this system where we go into these sources, like these different books, and we kind of save quotes on them, and then we track ideas that are related to those quotes. And just the other day, I wasn't thinking about trying out the app, but I found myself thinking in exactly these terms. I was listening to a podcast with Yehuda Katz of the Ember core team, one of the creators of Ember, and he was talking about some ideas about front-end development, and I wanted to save the quotes he had to say because they were really good. And then after I saved those quotes, I was thinking, like, how would I capture this? How would I think about this to keep it in my mind? And I found that I was thinking in terms of quotes and in terms of ideas, just like our Ideas app handles. So this really validates to me that this is a good idea, and this is going to be useful for me and hopefully for others as well. So that's been really cool at the end of this live stream series to come to the point where I'm like, hey, this is a good app. I'm really glad that we've done this. It's a great takeaway. So now let's dive into the functionality. We want to be able to edit ideas. So let's start with the idea resource, because it's one of the ideas and quotes are some of the key resources in the app, and then the quotes will have a bit more complexity that we'll dive into as well. So we have the ability to create a new idea here and delete an idea here. And we can go into the details to see the quotes that are related to it, but that's about all. We want to be able to edit an idea if we've gotten something wrong, if there's been a typo, or we want to change it, add, or remove from the idea, or something like that. So where can we do this? Now, coming from a server-rendered background like I am, I often find myself thinking about, oh, I've got to edit something? Well, that's going to be a new route. I need a new route and a new screen for an edit form. But that's not really the case in front-end development. Oftentimes it's useful to say, okay, ideas/1, like that's the resource, that's the route that corresponds to this record. And so I can edit it from here just as well as view it. So that's what I'd like to do, is I'd like to take this header card here that represents the idea, and instead of just displaying it, give us the option to edit it as well. So let's go through that one step at a time. We're going to go in here to our application. We're going to trace things out from the route that we're on, and we'll say, let's close this down here. So this is the ideas template. We see here that we're showing the summary of the idea at the top, and then when we go down to the bottom, we're going through all the quotes, and we list out the quotes one at a time on different cards. So what I want to do is take this just inline paper card that I've set up, that was kind of read-only, and I want to make it into a component so we can add some functionality, some editing functionality, some conditionality to it as well. So let's just generate a component with my shortcut, generate component. I think I call this idea header. I have worked ahead on this to make sure that it's something that was going to work, okay? So let's get this going. Let's check on my virus scanner that is always slowing things down. generate this component any minute now. Oh, I'm in the wrong folder. Yeah, okay, so... All right, now we'll generate the component. So first what we're going to do, I'm going to do this as a refactoring process one step at a time, where first I just pull over the existing functionality as it is to go into a new component, and then I'm going to add the new functionality in. So what we can do, because this is Ember, we can just kind of cut this existing code and paste it right into the new component template without any changes. We'll have to make a little bit of a change in just a second. And then here we can just say idea header. Now, do we need to pass anything into it? Yes, well, we need the idea. And so now, instead of having access to this model like we have in the route, we're going to want the passed in idea. We use the @ sign because it's an argument that's passed in. So here we say idea equals this.model. So now we're passing the idea into there, and I think it'll actually just work. So let's reload the page and see, and it does. Just to make sure we've got it right, let's just put some exclamation points in there and reload, or it should reload it ourselves. Yep. So that confirms that this is happening as a separate component. So then what else do we want to do? Well, right now we have this mode where we're viewing the component, we're viewing the idea, but we want it to be able to edit it as well. So what we can do is we can go into the idea header, and we can put in an isEditing property to track whether they're editing or not. We're going to want it to be a tracked property, so we're going to import tracked. We're going to say tracked isEditing equals false. And again, the tracked decorator there ensures that Ember's change tracking is going to hit it so that when it changes, it'll re-render the template. So let's go in and create a button here to be able to edit that, change the state to edit and then switch back. Let's see here, I'm going to copy and paste from over here. So the idea header here. Next to the card title, we're going to create card actions, and we're going to have an edit button that doesn't action this start editing. And we're going to see why we need to have a custom action for that in just a moment. So, but let's create that. We're going to want the action import as well. Create a start editing method, and then here we just say this is editing equals true. So that's going to make us to start editing. So now we can put a condition around this whole thing, and we can just say if is editing, we'll just do that for now just to make sure we understand what's going on. So it's still going to be a paper card, but we're going to switch out all the contents of it. So now if we're editing, we're going to display something here, and then if we're not editing, we're going to display the contents as it already is. So let's see that. We have the form here, we have the edit button, and when we click on it, we switch over to editing, which looks terrible because we haven't styled it at all. We're not using Ember paper at all. But this just shows us that we're able to use the functionality to go back and forth. I'm going to go ahead and add a cancel button into the editing mode so we can get back. We'll say cancel. Cancel editing. We're going to do a cancel editing action as well. This is editing equals false. So let's check it out. Now, when we click edit, we go into the editing mode and we can cancel to get back. So that's fine. So now let's get to the point where we're actually editing the functionality. So here we have the model and we can edit the fields on it. Well, here, let me start to make an input here and then we can talk about that. I'm going to put this... Ooh, that's actually the code that I have on my cheater branch where I've worked ahead is maybe not what I prefer. So let's check and see what we're supposed to do with a card in Ember paper, or the UI library we're using. There is card title, card content. Card content feels like the most appropriate thing here. Let's close that out. Okay, so if we're editing, we'll create a card content. Content singular. Yeah, card content singular. And in here we're going to make a form. It's a paper form. And we'll hold off. Well, yeah, let's do on submit. Submit. So we need to be able to handle submitting. And we're going to just make an action called save. And we're going to do a block form here so we can get the helper object that kind of ties all these things together. And then now we're going to make an input. So we want an input here. It's going to be a text area because I found that I want the multiple lines for an idea. We want it to display as a block. I think I need this. This is a setting provided by Ember Paper that has helped. And we want a placeholder. Because this is an edit form, probably it'll be the contents will be filled in, but in case we delete it out, let's have the placeholder saying that this is the idea field. Now we want to set the value. So now here's the question. What value do we want to show here? We could say, okay, we just want to do the idea dot summary. But this would, because of Ember's two-way binding, this would result in making changes as we type onto the idea record itself. And you can get into trouble here because this is the centralized idea record that's used throughout the rest of your app. Think about making changes if you were working in React or something like that, making changes into your central Redux data store. So this is a form, and we want the form to have temporary state that we're typing in before we save it. That way, if we cancel it, there's nothing to undo. It's just temporary state that has been saved. So instead of doing this, we're going to do the simplest possible way to do this, which is to say edited idea summary. It's a very verbose name, but this just is, let us know this field is the edited version of the idea summary. So we want to create this field on here. It's going to be a tracked property on the component itself, edited idea summary, and we don't need to set it to any particular value because when we start editing, that's when we want to copy it over. So we say edited idea summary equals this args idea summary. So this is going to copy over this summary every time we start editing. And one reason this is nice to do this at this point that I found is that even if we can't make some changes, cancel out, and then come back in, the form is still going to have the summary as it exists saved on the idea record. So that's going to be really nice to give us the field to edit. And again, this is not, I said two-way binding, but with Ember Paper, it's more of a unidirectional data flow. So we set the value like this, and then we have to provide an on-change handler. But we can use Ember template helpers for this. We could say we want an action that mutates this edited idea summary. And then the value from the form input is going to be passed into that mutation action, and it's going to save the value of that field. Again, this is a bit more verbose with Ember Paper than with Ember Bootstrap or just using inputs directly in Ember, but that's what they do, so that's fine. Finally, we have some pass-through attributes we want to provide to the input. And I want to say auto capitalize sentences. Pass-through is just an Ember Paper attribute that's going to allow us to set this property, and we want the browser to auto-capitalize sentences in case we're editing on mobile to give us the capitalization that we want. So that's really nice. Okay, that's our one field that we have set up as of right now. And then we need an actual save button as well, so let's type that in. We got a paper button. And I want to do primary raised. That's going to give us a nice yellow rectangle around the button. And then on click, this.save. And I might not actually need that because we have this.save on the form as well. I forget. Oh, it looks like the form's got to go somewhere else because these buttons down here I want to be included. So let's, oh, maybe it's because they're not in the form that I did that. Well, regardless, even though it's not in the form, clicking this.save is going to make it work. So let's just stick with that, and we'll call it save. So let's just take a look first before we implement save to make sure our form looks okay. When we edit here, we get this editable text field, and we can see that it wraps to multiple lines. That's actually something really nice about Ember Paper, and maybe material design in general, that we can have multiple lines here. Duval FPW on the stream says, do you teach the React Bootcamp? That's a great question. So Big Nerd Ranch, where I work, does React Bootcamps. I have not taught it yet, but I'm one of several of our developers that is training up to teach the bootcamp. So I'm very excited to do that. I've just enjoyed teaching on live streams and meetup talks and conference talks. I'm doing a workshop this summer. And yeah, I'm hoping to be up to speed soon for the React Bootcamp because there's a lot of demand for it and we want to teach it more and more. So thanks for asking and hope to see you at one soon. All right, so we've got our form. We can edit it, we can cancel, we get that nice yellow save button, but now we want to have the actual saving functionality. So let's kind of go into and implement that. And then in there, look over at my cheater monitor. So we want the action save. This is going to need to be an async action, and we'll see why in just a second here. So we want to pull the idea out of the arguments, and then now we want to we can update it. We can do set properties. So this is a way to set multiple properties at once on this Ember data record. Actually, we don't even need to set multiple properties. We can just do set. Summary. This edited idea summary. Now you might think that you could just do idea.summary equals this.edited idea summary. But I found in experimenting with this in Ember Octane that there's that's not quite implemented yet in Ember Data. So previously all of Ember required you to use the set method whenever you wanted to set a value on an object. And so in components and controllers and other places, this .set has been removed, so we don't need that anymore. But in Ember Data we do still need to call set to set that property. So that's fine. So then we want to do await idea.save. So save is an asynchronous action. So we're going to await it to make sure it finishes. And then once it finishes, we do this.editing equals false. So I think that should do it. Thanks to Ember Data and the simplicity of it, if we have an idea record, we can edit it and save it directly there. And in our case, that's what we want to do. So let's edit this crazy idea name. Let's add some exclamation points on the end and click save. And it seems like it's probably errored out. So let's find out what happened. Save. Do we make a network request? Yeah, we're making a network request and it's saved. So why is it not switching back? Oh, is editing false. I think in my other code I named the property something different. So let's reload it. Click edit. We added those exclamation points like this is updated and click save. And then now this is updated shows up. And if we reload the page, we see that the change has been persisted to the server side. Mr. Little Smurf on the stream asks, what are you making? That's a great question. So we've been building this app called an Ideas app, and it's kind of a unique take on note-taking for me. So I find that when I'm reading books or articles and other interesting things, I'll save quotes from the book, and quotes from the book are useful, but it's also interesting for me to abstract them out and say, here's a very concrete quote, but what's the abstract idea? And so we can see even with the example here, here's two quotes from the book Refactoring by Martin Fowler. I have a Boston accent there. But both of these quotes, to me, get to the idea, refactoring in small steps allows you to make changes gradually. So this app allows me to save quotes and then connect them to ideas, and then I can go into the list of ideas here, look at the idea, and see all the quotes that are connected to it. So it's sort of like a two-way connection to kind of improve my note-taking the way I like to do it. So that's the idea we've been working with. Hopefully others are interested as well, but that's where we're at. All right, so I think our editing functionality is working. We're able to edit and cancel this, and that's very nice and simple. And this is all wrapped up in a pretty simple component here, where the component knows how to display itself in editing form or non-editing form, and you can edit it and save the changes all wrapped up there. It's pretty simple. So let's make a commit. Remove those tests, because again, I'm not using tests in this approach right now. Allow editing the idea. So if we were to edit the names of authors or the names of sources, that would be pretty simple, pretty similar. So instead, I want to go on to something that's a bit more challenging. I mean, that can be an exercise for the reader if you want to try that later. When you pull up a source and you see quotes here, you see that this quote is tied to this idea. So not only do I want to be able to edit this quote, I also want to change the idea that it's connected to, or even create a new idea inline. And to be honest, this was the most challenging part to me about thinking of this project. I wasn't clear what kind of user experience would be good and would be enjoyable to connect ideas and quotes together. But I've come up with something that I think I like, and so let's give it a try together to make it work. First, let's go into this quote card and let's get the editing of the quote text itself working in the same way. Then we'll add in the editing of the idea. So in this case, there's not a page for an individual quote, and I think that's fine. I can see the quote underneath the sources here, and I think editing it in line here makes sense and would be good. I'd like to be able to just stay in the context of the source that I'm working in while I'm editing individual quotes, just like if you had a big page of notes for a book or for a talk or something like that. So let's edit this in place. So instead of a quote header, we're just going to put editing functionality into this quote card itself. So let's do that. Move this up. All right, where is this? We've got our quote card already exists. And again, we have the read-only mode for it, and we want to be able to set up an editing mode as well. All right, so let's go in. Let's actually copy the edit button. We'll put the edit button here. Start editing. And so let's switch back over to the quote card and put that in. We'll add a track property. is editing. We'll start off at false and say action start editing. This is editing equals true. Okay, so that's going to switch us into editing. Let's go ahead and create cancel editing. Is editing false? And we could copy this all over, but it's not too much work to type it. So we're going to put a big conditional around this again. If this is editing, and then else, and if, and then here we're going to make some card actions, and we're going to say cancel editing, cancel, and then save. Save button, and this is primary and raised. Okay, so back in here, we're gonna, we have cancel editing, action save. Well, let's to do that, we'll come back to that in just a second. Also in is editing, we'll start copying over the fields now. And I'm gonna copy it over from here. So we have our card content. So in a quote form, we want to edit. It's going to be a text area again. It's going to be the quote text. And so we're going to call this tracked edited quote text. You don't need to set a value now, but here we're going to say edited quote text. This args quote text. So we're going to copy over the text to this temporary editing variable for the form, and then it should be there. All right, so let's see if we've got editing and unediting working here. We've got a quote, we've got an edit button, we switch over, and then when we edit it, the text is not filled in. So that seems incorrect. I mean, it's certainly incorrect. Oh, it's because I haven't changed this. We're in the quote card, but we need edited quote text here. Placeholder should be quote, and we do still want auto-capitalized sentences. If we're typing in the contents instead of just copying and pasting it in, that'll be useful. So let's see here. We've got our page. Edit it, and then the text is there, and we can cancel out. And you see that right now the idea disappears as we edit it. We're going to make that editable in just a moment, but first this text field will be simplest. So let's go into the save action, and I'm just going to copy that over from the idea header. We're going to get the quote out of the arguments. I'm going to set the text equal to the edited quote text. Oh, and this is not called the idea, this is called quote. Set the text and then save it. We need an async action here. It is great how Ember has async await built in the Babel transforms. That's really nice, as well as decorators. Okay, and then we set editing to false at the end. So let's give that a try. Let's modernize Martin Fowler a bit by putting a lol on the end here. We save the quote, and it looks like it's saved. But let's reload and get it to reload from the server, and it's there, and all of its meme-tastic glory as Martin Fowler is telling us how funny it is to refactor. Okay, cool. So this is nice. I'm going to do a commit here, and I'm going to say allow editing quote text. So that's nice. That was pretty similar to what we did before with the header. But now we need to get on to editing the idea here. And I think what I'm going to do, there's two different circumstances. One is editing based on an existing idea we already have, and two is the possibility of actually adding a new idea in line without needing to go to a totally separate screen. So one of the big advantages of rich front-end apps like this is that you don't need to go to multiple screens and fill out multiple forms to make things happen. We can richly give the user all the functionality they need on the page they're on at the time. So let's first go in and allow them with a drop-down to select the idea. So Ember Paper has a select component called Paper Select, and then it shows up nicely. It kind of allows for scrolling for very long lists, and it's got some nice fading behavior. I'm not sure if you can see that on the stream or not, but it fades in and out, which is really nice, and it looks good on mobile as well. So let's implement that over into here. So we're going to go into the quote card. We're going to have another component after this form input, and I'm going to just look over here. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, cool. So we have a paper select. I'm not sure if it can exist on the form kind of helper object there, but paper select works, so let's go with that. All right, so what can we do? We want to set it to display as a block. That'll be nice. We want a label that's going to show up. This label, like you might expect, will show up if we haven't selected a value yet. We'll say existing idea. which could be useful if we're actually, yeah, even in the production version of the app that I'm using day to day, I don't have the idea selection happening when you're first entering the idea. And this kind of fits with my workflow that as I'm entering, first I'm just writing out the quotes, and then I often come back afterwards, maybe just a minute or two afterwards, but I want to enter the quotes first and then come back and edit the ideas for them. So just having the single quote field up here on the create form works fine for me. If I found that that's limiting in the future, I could add the idea selector to the new quote form as well. But for now, this works fine. All right, so we now need a list of options to provide to the paper select. And so now we find that we need access to the ideas that show up in here. Now it can be a good idea to load our content in the route as we've seen in previous weeks. So let's go out to the route that we're on and we'll pass that into the component itself. So the route that we're on is called what? We're on the source detail. Oh, that's the template, but we want the route class for the source detail. And so right now there's the model hook or the model method of the route where we're finding the appropriate source record as well as related data as well. And we want to find two things instead now. And so to do that, let me find in my cheater code here, code for it. There's a library called RSVP that we can use for this. Now, RSVP predates JavaScript promises, but it functions a lot like promise.all, at least the way we're using it here. So what we're able to do, instead of just returning this one thing, we can say return rsvp.hash. And so we want to return a hash of multiple things. One thing is the, let's say the source. And the source is going to be this content we were loading before. The source including this related data and reload setting and things like that. So at this point, it's more or less the same, but we want to go in and add something else as well. We also want to load the ideas. And this is just going to be this.store.find all idea. We just want to load all the ideas for the app. So by passing this in an RSVP hash, Ember is going to wait to display the page until we've loaded both the source and the ideas as well, even though it's two different requests to the server side. So that's going to get us what we need. Now we need to go into the detailed route because we've changed how to access the source. It's no longer the model, it's part of the model. So in the source detail here, instead of the quote being source here, it's this.model.source. And then here, instead of the quotes being directly under the model, it's source.quotes. Yeah, that's right. I got confused because of the header because we haven't changed it here. But this is also the source title and the source author name. Let's take out our paper select right now and let's just paste it into this file and let's make sure things still load correctly. Sources page and things are showing up okay. And if we check in the our browser tools, we should see that a request is going out for the ideas as well as for the source. So that data is now available, so that's good. So we actually want to pass that into the, not into the new quote form, into the quote card. So a quote card has the quote, but we also need the ideas passed there if we're going to be able to edit them. It's .model.ideas. If we're going to be able to edit the quote to add the idea. So we add this model ideas passed into the quote card, and now the quote card doesn't care where those ideas came from, how they're loaded in the route or some other way. It's just provided with the ideas that it needs. All right, so now let's paste our paper select back in here. Now in the options is just going to be the ideas. And let me see here if I needed to do anything fancy. No, it did not. So I wonder if, it's interesting, I think it might actually automatically select a label that I display, which is neat. I'm sure you could customize that if you wanted to change which field or fields display there. Oh no, I see where I'm doing that. So I'm going to do that in just a second. So we pass out all the ideas records, the idea models as the options for the paper select. So let's go on. So next we say selected. Which model is selected? Which option is selected? And we'll say this.idea. In fact, let's say edited idea to show that this is the editing state for the idea that we're working with. Next, we want to do onChange again, and we do action mutate this.edited idea. And note that by working through this paper select abstraction, we're able to work with the models directly. We don't need to say that what's selected is a model ID or change the model ID and look it up from the list. We're just able to operate with this abstraction. We operate with the models, so that's really nice. Now, paper select is going to take a block. We say as idea. And in the block, this is where we're able to specify which text or which markup or even which components, I think, show up in the paper select as the options. So the value we want to show is just going to be idea.summary. We're going to show the summary for the idea in the list. So we have this edited idea field, so we now need to set it up in the quote card class. So let me close out some files we don't need. And we're going to say tracked edited idea. And we say here this dot edited idea equals this dot args quote dot idea. And again, we're still here working just purely in terms of the models. We have the idea record that's showing up in there. And we don't need to worry about comparing things in a deep way or looking up IDs and normalizing and denormalizing. We're just able to work with our models, which is nice and intuitive. Now when we're saving, we need to set the idea as well. And for this, Ember data and Ember objects in general have a set properties. It lets us set multiple properties at once. So we can just say the text is this edited quote text. And for the idea, we can say this edited idea. And if you've got more than 2 properties in editing form, there's other abstractions. There's a few different Ember add-ons that let you easily wrap a model and kind of handle the work in progress changes to it. But that's kind of beyond the scope of what we need here. It's nice to show this directly, and we get to take advantage of Ember Octane Preview's tracked property here. So this sets up the idea field, and this saves it in the end. Excuse me. So let's save this and give it a try. Let's see first if the form even works, because we haven't even looked at it yet. So here, refactoring in small steps is the idea we have, and let's click edit, and it breaks. So we messed something up. So let's check in the console and see what happened. A computed property key must be a string. You passed undefined, undefined. Okay, well, so we've gotten something wrong here. I don't think inspecting this is going to help us very much. Yeah, that's deep in the bowels of Ember, so that's not going to help. So let's just kind of compare this with the cheater list here. Quote card, the idea. Args quote idea. Quote set property. I mean, we're not saving yet, so that should be fine. Yeah, quote save. Interesting. Well, so let's take out a little bit at a time and just see what's going on. Let's take out idea summary and just say lol there. Let's see if we can edit this now. No. Computed property must be a string. You pass undefined, undefined. Huh, this rings a bell. I wonder if I've not updated to the right version of Ember Paper, because I think this happened at some point when I was working on this earlier. This rings a bell. Let's take a look and see. I'm going to compare this. You know, especially when you're working in the Ember Octane preview period, it makes sense that things might need to be updated. So Ember Paper beta 24, that looks right. Ember Data 1D. Okay, so that's a different version of Ember Data and Ember Source. So let's update those. This is just kind of troubleshooting. Could have been good to do this in advance. So that's the version of Ember CLI. This is the version of Ember Data, and this is the version of Ember Source. So let's do yarn install. Cool. So while this is running, let's think about what we're doing. So we should now have the ability in the quote card to edit both the text field, that is the quote, and also choose from a drop-down what idea we want to work with, what idea we want to link to the quote record. So this should be good for setting up the writing of things. And then the only thing we'll have to do after this is to be able to choose an additional idea and create a new idea in line as a part of the form as well. And I found that to be very productive when I've worked on this. So let's see if I've just messed up my installation irreparably or what. This is always exciting to do it live. You know, one of the few times I've done a conference talk before, just this past fall, I literally ran through the test of the code, the live coding exercise, on the conference Wi-Fi beforehand. It worked perfectly. Then when I got up there, it was like nothing was running. Test wouldn't run, app wouldn't run. Luckily, I had set up slides in advance because I was like, I'm just a paranoid individual. I don't trust anything. But man, like you never know when something's going to go wrong. So let's check this out here. Now, computer property key must be a string. You passed undefined, undefined. All right, so that change didn't fix it. Let me look over it one more time here. And maybe we'll just move on to kind of creating an idea if this doesn't work. So we've got a paper select. It is too bad that this is not a clear error message here. Label is existing idea. The options is the ideas that were passed in. Is this on master? Yeah. Oh, maybe what I'm passing in is incorrect. Let's take a look here. In fact, you know what? I know what we can do. Let's take the paper select out real quick here, because I wondered at some point if Ember paper was updated to work with Octane, if things were working okay. So let's just do a normal each. This is a great way to each ideas as idea. Taking the third-party library out of the mix, we're just going to output the ideas. Idea summary. So let's check this out and see if this works. We can see if the problem is in the data being passed in or if the problem is in the component. So we edit it, and we see that we're able to display the form, and we're able to loop through the different properties and show them. They're just not working in the Ember select. All right, so okay, so this is good. I'm going to keep this here just to remind me of my sanity. I wonder if it's the order that I'm doing this in the card here. Quote card. Yeah, I set editing true at the end, so I wonder if Ember is actually re-rendering before I even set the other thing. Let's see here. Yeah, so that error is out still. So let's try this. Instead, let's set is editing at the start. So edited idea was not assigned to anything when we changed is editing, which maybe re-rendered the form. But now we'll set is editing to true at the end. Now we edit it. No, it still errors out, so that didn't fix it. You pass undefined, undefined. Well, I don't want to keep y'all waiting too long here. Let me just kind of do one more pass through it to see. Ideas. So ideas is there. Ideas is there. Edited idea. What if I don't provide a selected? Let's try that as well. Or an on change. We'll see if Ember paper is probably not going to be okay with that. But let's see. Computed property must be a computed property key must be a string. Edited idea. Edited idea. Idea summary. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, sorry about this. Like, I'm not able to get this working. I'm sure I could get like just a normal HTML select working, but let's not do that off the cuff. Like, we'll just cancel this part of the functionality for now, and instead we're going to go into creating an idea from scratch. So let's show how to do that. Let's take this out first. We can leave the passing of the ideas in, and I can post on Twitter or on notes to the episode afterwards to see if I can figure out what went wrong. So our form is editable now. So now let's handle the case where we want to enter a new idea. So we'll create a form input. Here we'll say new idea. We'll call this new idea. I forget the name of the field. Summary. New idea summary. On change, new idea summary. Capitalized sentences seems fine. So we need to create new idea summary text field. So anytime we start editing, we want a new idea summary to be equal to the empty string to start out fresh. And then now when we save. So now if there's no conditions, because I was not able to get the selecting an existing idea working, so we're always going to be creating a new idea when we edit the quote. That's not going to work long term, of course, but this is enough to demo it for now. So how can we do that? Let's take a look at the code here. So we're going to actually need access to the Ember data store to create a new record in here. So we're going to do import the service here. We're going to get the store service to get access to the Ember data store. And then down in the action, we're going to go in here and create the idea first. So I'm going to say const idea equals this.store.create record. It's an idea. And we're going to say summary is the new idea summary. So this is going to create a new idea with that summary. Then we're going to await idea.save. And this is, again, one of the nice things about async and await is that we can have these sequential asynchronous things, but it reads sequentially like this. So first we await for the idea to save, and then we're just going to assign the same idea when we set the property on the quote, which is we can use the object property shorthand like this to assign it. So this is going to create the new idea and then save it on the quote along with any edited text, if anything. So let's give this a try and see what happens. So we're on the page, we edit the form, we see we've got our quote, and we can say this quote is new and improved. This idea is completely fresh. So hopefully this will create a new idea for us and assign it to this quote. All right, so it looks right. We've got the quote that's new and improved. We've got the idea showing up in here as though the idea is completely fresh. So let's reload the page. It's changed the order of the records, actually. We don't have sorting in place here. I did that separately on the master branch. But we do see the quote is here with the idea that's completely fresh. And if we go to the list of ideas, we can see the idea that's completely fresh and the quote underneath it. So it seems like that's worked for us to save the idea onto there. So that's really great. Let's see what else I had. Sorting the ideas was a thing. Let's see here. We got time. Let me see if I can get the editing of the ideas working with a regular select input, because I think that would be good. So what we're going to do is have a property on here. We're going to say, in addition to editing, we're going to have another property where we say whether we want to add a new idea or use an existing one. So we can say adding new idea equals false. By default, we'll use an existing idea. It's very conservative of us. Okay, so we edit the form. Yeah, so adding new idea starts as false, and let's reset that anytime we edit as well. Adding new idea is false. So what we're going to say in here is we're going to say if at this adding new idea. So if we're adding a new idea, we want this input, and then otherwise we're going to want to select. Let me put buttons in here real quick to allow us to switch back before them. We're going to just put them in line here. And I haven't figured out the perfect way to do this yet, a way to lay it out that I love. So we'll say, if we're not adding a new idea, we can switch to new idea. And if we are adding a new idea, we can switch to existing idea. And we'll just make actions for each of those to make our template as declarative and descriptive as possible. So we'll say action, let's put them here. Switch to new idea is this. Adding new idea is true. And then we'll say switch to existing idea. Adding new idea is false. And we'll just say existing ideas to go here, just to make sure that this part of the functionality is working. So we're going to go into our source, edit our idea, and we see here that by default we're shown that placeholder for the component we're going to add to choose an existing idea. We click switch to new idea, and then now we get a place to type in a new idea, and then we can switch back. So we can switch back and forth, and either way, if we cancel and then we edit again, we go back to the existing idea approach. So let's try again to allow our existing ideas to edit. And part of the deal with the approach I've been taking in this project, where I'm not trying to get the look and feel finalized, I'm just trying to keep things moving to get something I can play with, something I can experiment with. So I'm okay with just using a regular browser select rather than an Ember paper one for the moment until I can figure it out. So let's see. I don't have the sample code in front of me, so we're going to get to figure this out together. So we're going to do a select, and let's see. We're going to do an each in here. Each ideas as idea. Then we're going to have an option. And here, because we're not working with Ember Paper's abstraction, we're going to actually have to set a value on the option that is a string. So we're going to do idea.id, and then we'll do idea.summary here. And we're going to have to map that ID back to the selected idea afterwards. Okay, and then we're going to need to say, I think we can say, we can say on change, that's for sure. We can say action, mutate, this, let's say selected idea ID. And we'll say here for this option, we'll say the option, let's indent here a bit, is selected if, how does this work? There's like some kind of helper. probably can't use regular JavaScript syntax here, but let's just try it to see. If this selected idea ID equals idea.id, and let's switch that direction around. So this option is selected if this idea's ID is the same as the selected one. Let's create that field. Selected idea ID. And when we start editing, we're going to set it to the idea's ID. And let's not worry about saving yet. Let's just see if this works. Yeah, handlebars does not like us having double equals here. And this is because handlebars templates don't actually execute JavaScript. And you could feel like this is a limitation, but it actually allows some impressive performance optimizations that the Glimmer rendering engine allows. So it's good to wrap things up in helpers like mute or in custom actions that we write. So let's just do a search on the web for Ember template helper equals. Ember truth helpers. That might be built in now, so let's try it. So if equals idea ID, this selected idea ID. Reload. Okay, it's not erroring out, so let's see. Here's an idea, here's a quote, and the idea is refactoring in small steps. We edit it, and we get an error. You have attempted to access the idea property of unknown. It's a proxy. It's still necessary to use get ID. Interesting. Huh. Wonder what that is. That seems unsuspected that I would need to do that in here. I guess we could get ID here. Might give up on this experiment in a minute if it's too much experimenting for on the stream, but we'll give it a try. Yeah, refactoring in small steps. And what if I do this idea is completely fresh? Yeah, sweet. Okay, cool. I was surprised I could wing this. All right, cool. So when we edit this form, we see the idea is shown here. Refactoring in small steps allows you to make changes gradually. We can switch to a new idea or switch back to the existing idea. Either way. So now, it's not beautiful that the dropdown gets so long, but that's okay for now. So now let's work on saving. So in saving, we need to do one of two possible different things. So we need to check and see if we're adding a new idea. So let's say if adding new idea, that's when we want to do this. And let's put this out here, let idea. If we're adding a new idea, we need to create the record and then save it. But otherwise, if we're using an existing idea, we just need to set the idea equals to .args.ideas. Can I find the idea by ID? I may not remember how to do that off the top of my head. Well, let's cheat and use the store. Store find record idea this dot selected idea ID. This is probably going to make another request to the server. So we could do this more efficiently if we worked off the ideas list that was passed in, but I can probably pull this off for the stream. This will probably be okay. So here, in this case, we assign the idea coming out of the store. And is that asynchronous? Let's check this out real quick here. Let's say Ember data. Let's look this up because I know it's going to be there in the store because we've downloaded all the things. Finding records. So there's a peak record. We'll retrieve a record by its type and ID without making a network request. So that's actually what we want. Peak record. And so that'll be synchronous, so we'll definitely get the idea back here. Another one of the very cool things about async await is in this branch of the conditional, we have an asynchronous request that we're awaiting, and in this one we don't. But either way, coming out of this conditional, we're going to have that resulting idea. And then for the quote, we just assign that idea onto here and we save it. So let's check this out and see if this works. We've been able to wing this. Okay, this idea has refactoring in small steps. Let's change it to foo. Oh, Okay, it looks like changing the dropdown is not actually changing the value that's selected on there. So let's check this out, see if we can figure it out in the little bit of time we have left. So on change, do we want that to be an @ sign here? I don't know if we do. Let's check and see. Yeah, you don't pass an argument with an @ sign to a regular HTML element. Maybe it needs to be all lowercase for HTML. Yeah, nope, that's not changing. Mutate selected idea ID. This is interesting. Huh. On change. Ember select handle change. Wish I had my, oh yeah, it looks like I found this before. Action set selection value target value. Yeah, let me check in the history of my repo here. This is a bit of a tricky issue. So the fact that I got an error with Ember paper is too bad. Makes it a little more challenging. Let's see how this is done. So we've got ideas Octane. I think this happened as a result of this history. Put paper select on its own line. Switch to Ember paper select. This is the commit where we did it. So let's check it out. Okay, so I had a select with on change handle idea change. Oh, and we were actually able to just use the value field on the select, which is nicer. So then in handle idea change, we just set event target value. So let's switch over to that. Clearly this worked at that time. So we're going to do value equals this selected idea ID. And on change, we're going to do this handle idea change. We don't need selected here, so we don't need to use that equal helper. That's just a little bit simpler. That's fine. Handle idea change. And then we took in the event because we're just getting past the raw, maybe it's wrapped by Ember, but effectively the raw DOM event. So that event's going to have a target value, which is going to be the value of the option chosen. So then we want to say this dot selected idea ID equals event target value. So I think that might work for us. Let's give it a try. And I did not figure this out on the first try. The first time either, I was playing around with it to see. Probably some console logs in there. All right, so I'm able to change the input now. Yeah. All right, so let's check this out. This quote has the idea of refactoring in small steps. We edit it. Oh, the initial value is not being set correctly. Let's see why that is. Args quote idea get ID. That might not be correct. I wonder why that's not correct. Well, let's just try and see if we can save it. We choose foo, we save foo, and now foo is set on there. When we edit it, the initial value is not set correctly, so that's too bad. We'd have to fix that for sure. But if we switch idea as like another new idea, and we save that, another new idea is saved on there as well. And again, they show up out of order, but here it is. So apart from some of the rough edges that I haven't quite smoothed out, we still have the possibility here of when you edit a quote, you can change the text, and you can choose a new idea, or you can enter a new idea, or choose an existing idea. Now this is obviously not the nicest looking user interface in the world. We want to clean that up, but it has been enough for me to play with the app in production to actually take notes in it to try it out. So this has been an experiment into some editing forms. So let's take the last few minutes we have together to wrap up the series. We've been able to go through with Ember and with Rails to create an app for tracking ideas. We have these ideas, these quotes, organized under sources and authors. So let me talk about some of my main takeaways from the series here. This has been a very experimental approach. I didn't know for sure when we started even. I did not work ahead on this series if this was going to be a useful idea or not. I had failed trying to create this app a few times before. But this time I stuck to very small steps trying to get as quickly as possible to something useful. And a few things in the architecture we chose really helped with that. So using Rails and Ember gave us tool sets on the front end and the back end where everything we needed just about was available out of the box to create relational applications storing data in databases, communicating using standard protocols. Ember data built into Ember helped us to consume a JSON API backend, and JSON API resources gem in Rails was able to allow us to create a backend very quickly and very efficiently. Then for authentication, we use Doorkeeper gem on the back end in Rails to set up OAuth 2 standard authentication. And then on the front end, we use the Ember add-on Ember Simple Auth to be able to log in very easily to that as well. Finally, deployment was very easy using Netlify on the front end and Heroku on the back end. We were able to hook things up to automatically deploy. It's very nice and simple. And then finally, other than a little bit of a slip up today with the Ember Paper Select, being able to use a UI toolkit like Ember Paper has made things very productive. We've been experimenting with layouts and things like that, and we haven't had to write any CSS. Not that I'm a little bit opposed to writing CSS, but I can do it for sure. But when you're in this experimentation phase, it's very nice to be able to pull something out. It's a tool set of components that works well together and put them together. And this is not something that's unique to the Ember ecosystem by any stretch of the imagination, but using a material design library or a Bootstrap library or some other newer library to get a nice cohesive UI lets you create an app that looks like an app very quickly so you can try it out and see if it feels useful. A few other things. We switched over the course of the series from the stable branch of Ember to the Ember Octane preview, and it's been really great. Some things have been really nice about it. In particular, these track properties are great just to be able to designate fields on our components of things that need to change and have them be able to do that very quickly and easily. What else was I going to say? So that's been really, really great. The other thing that pulls a lot of this together was some of the repos that I have that I've created that we used at the start of the project to set things up. Ember Up, which is a template for Ember that sets up Ember Simple Auth and a bunch of other testing tools, as well as API Up to create the API backend configured for JSON API and Doorkeeper authentication. So links to API Up and Ember Up are in the show notes. I definitely encourage you to check those out for your own projects. But this has been our series. I'm really excited that you've gone through this with me. I'm looking forward to pointing people back to these recordings in the future to help explain what it is about Ember and Rails that are so appealing to me. We could have built an app like this in any framework, but in any framework, we would have been dragged down by having to write a custom front-end data management and custom back-end data management to get all this to work. To build up mutations, to create things and edit things, to build up custom fetch requests to kind of load data and save data. And it's been so much nicer to be able just to go in and do things like save, quote.save, store.create record. It's so simple and easy. And as I've said before, Ember data is really the moat that keeps me hooked on Ember. There's a lot of other great things I love about Ember as well, but Ember data in particular means that Ember is a framework that's not just opinionated about the front end, but it's opinionated about how you can connect to the back end as well. Ember is great to use without Ember data if you need to connect to the back end in a different way, and there's a bunch of Ember add-ons that allow you to do that. But if you have control over the front end and the back end, because you're a small team, because you're an individual working on a project, or because it's a side project, a hobby project, I think you're going to get far more productivity with Ember and Rails than any other combination. So I'd really encourage you to give it a try. One final plug I just remembered. As I plugged before, Embercast is a website for learning to build full-stack applications. It looks like their $99 deal is still on, so I'd highly recommend you to check that out. You can learn Ember on the front end with a number of different backends like Node.js, Rails, or Phoenix, ASP.NET Core. So if any of those are more appealing to you, you could definitely check those out. But Rails in particular, I feel like is the most productive of all the backends. And so if you've enjoyed this course, you should definitely check out Embercast Full Stack Ember with Rails.
Welcome to this course from Embercast.
They're talking. Quiet. I'm on a stream. So they're talking here. I'm not affiliated with them. I like them a lot. I'm not getting any kind of reference links or anything like that. But I just really love them, and I really benefited from the Full Stack Ember Rails course. So if you want more of a systematic approach to the things we've been learning here, you should definitely check it out at embercast.com. I think that was all I wanted to say. Check the recording show notes for all of these links. And follow me on Twitter at CodingItWrong, or on Twitch. I'm going to be off of regular live streams for a little while, maybe a couple months, while I'm getting ready for a workshop this summer. But I'll be back on again soon, and maybe some arbitrary random recordings or live streams coming up. But I really appreciate everyone who's joined in. Thank you so much to Ember newsletters for posting us and sharing about us, and everybody from the Ember Discord group that's joined in and said hello. It's been really encouraging. I've had a blast here. This has really renewed my energy for Ember. I'm definitely going to be using it for all my side projects going forward, if at all possible. And thanks for joining in. So Duval FPW and Mr. Little Smurf, thanks for joining on the chat and saying hello. And we'll catch everybody on Twitter. See ya. Let's go to the slide. Bye.